Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the fifth in our series of programs for the Visions of the Wild project called 38 Degrees North. We're traveling literally around the world, especially today, on the 38th parallel to look at the topics that interest us here at the Visions of the Wild Festival, which is the connection between nature, culture, and community. Because this year, 2020, as strange as it's been, is the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, we decided to call our program this year, our overall theme, Earth Year. And our intention was to look at this question of art and nature from a global perspective, given that the idea of Earth was critical to this idea. But also Earth Day is such an important moment in terms of environmental activism. And a lot of that activism obviously happens at the local level. So we wanted to look at both the global perspective and we wanted to look at the local perspective as well. And we're really thrilled today to have the opportunity to look at that in Tajikistan, which is literally on the other side of the world from where we are here in Vallejo. So by joining us today, you are automatically a member of the 38 Degrees North Explorers Club. It's a very exclusive club, but it's not that hard to get into. I'll just briefly mention that we have our upcoming programs on January 20th of next year. We have a program about land art. You can read the details on our visionsofthewild.org website. We'll have a very fine presentation from a curator at the Nevada Art Museum in Reno, Nevada. And then on February 17th, we'll be showing a film called The Sacramento at Current Speed and talk about the importance of that amazing river here in our great state of California. So when we talk about the 38th parallel, we're actually pretty generous in our description. It's basically everything between the 37th parallel and the 39th parallel. This is the 38th parallel here. Here we are in Vallejo, California. You can see the 38th parallel running just to the south of us. Here's San Francisco. And where we're going today is Central Asia, the country of Tajikistan. And you can see that Dushanbe, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, is located here just a little bit to the north of the 38th parallel. And we have three wonderful speakers, presenters today, two of whom are coming to us from Tajikistan, one of them from Portland. Since I will probably butcher the names, I will call them by their nicknames, Loli, Drew, and Umed. And to start off, this program is kind of divided into two parts. We're going to talk about the arts part first, and Loli will speak to that, both the traditional and contemporary arts scene in Tajikistan. And then Drew McCarter and Umed will be talking about the environmental issues that are facing Tajikistan today. And I think you'll be quite fascinated to hear about all the work that they're doing. Just a couple of pieces of housekeeping. A reminder that we will be taking questions at the end of all the presentations. And so please put your questions into the chat box and I will read as many as I can given the time that we have available. So please make sure you do that. And it's best to do that as the presentations are happening so that you keep an idea of, so those ideas will be fresh in your mind. The other thing is that if you have the video full screen, you won't be able to see the chat box. So you'll have to minimize the video screen in order to put your question into the chat box. I also want to take a moment to just thank my colleague, Dragan Amanson, who did a tremendous job of helping to put together this presentation. And we have a very wonderful team of people here in Vallejo, California that work on this Visions of the Wild Festival. So having said that, I now want to introduce our first speaker, Loli. And Loli, why don't you take it over from here?
Thanks, Steve. Thanks so much for inviting me. And yeah, it's working. Okay. Yeah. Thanks so much for inviting me to be part of your wonderful event. So, and I would love to. Okay, it's here. Yeah. Hello to everyone who join us here at the Vision of the Wild Festival. This is awesome that the Dushanbe has been an integral part of 38 Parallel. And I'm so much happy to talk about my home country and the city I was born and matured. Oops, yeah, it's here, I think. Here, a little bit about myself. I'm an experienced project manager in the field of arts and culture. And now I'm more for researching and making art. I have been contributing to the different international publishers like Voices of Central Asia, Central Asian Analytical Network, The Diplomat, and Transitory White. It's possible to find my small contributions so about arts and culture of Tajikistan. And here's a map of Tajikistan. We are neighboring Kyrgyzstan in the north and Uzbekistan in the west, Afghanistan in the south, and also China in the east. We are a mountainous country with 93% of stone terrain. The climate is acute continental. We have severe winters and hot summers. There are plenty of sweet and mineral water springs here. Also, we are motherland to many precious and semi-precious stones like rubies, gemstones, sapphire, spinel, aquamarine, topaz, and lazurite. Tajikistan consists of 3 regions: Gabao, we say the Pamirs, located in the east of the country, Sukh province, situated in the north, and Hatlon province in the south of the country. Dushanbe is the capital, situated in the west of the country. So, about Dushanbe. Dushanbe image has been changing dramatically. From a small provincial city of the Soviet Empire, it turns into a sparkling image of the Tower City. So, little bit about Tajikistan. It's an agricultural society with 72% of its population residing in rural areas. 60% of those employed in agriculture are women. Generally speaking, women represent 51% of Tajikistan population. The collapse of Soviet Empire 1991 and the Civil War 1992-1997 were a chaotic time for Tajik people as the society deconstructed, rejecting the old Soviet times values, but struggling to find its new national and ethnic identity. Here are some photos, my photos of Tajik nature. So, about culture. Tajiks have rich culture. One of the remarkable pages of Tajik cultural history has been the traditional, decorative, and applied arts. Wood. Wood, the favorite construction material in Central Asia. Mulberry trees, plane trees, poplars, junipers, walnuts were especially valued for the production of architectural details as columns, friezes, cornices, beams, doors, gates. And here there's my photos also taken in the north of Tajikistan. And some photos, these photos of our remarkable famous Tajik photographer Zaur Zakhte. I borrowed photos from him. So, embroidery. Embroidery has an important place in textile production. It included several kinds of products, notably wall rugs, cover prayer rugs. Embroidery ornaments were satin stitched, cross stitched, and chain stitched. Swastikas, solar circles, dragons, the elements of vegetation, plants, zoomorphic origin have been the most popular patterns in the decorative and applied arts. And when it comes to the Pamirs people, they are known for knitted colored jurab socks. Tajik have been born of colorful patterns using combination of red, yellow, green, brown, black, and white colors. Our ancestors thought they cross with the equal ends, expressing harmony, health. Swastikas were a sign of nobility. A triangle was always a symbol of woman. And here are some photos of mine with a sample of dishes, cuisine. Tajik cuisine is simple. So, besides the traditional decorative and applied arts, Tajikistan has rich tradition in music, dance, fine arts, sacred places. I have some videos on my YouTube channel. Please visit it if you would like to find out more. So, about art activism. I have to mention that Tajik artists rarely use arts as a tools for protest. When it comes to visual arts, Tajik artists use metaphors, allegories, and often don't touch the social problems at all. There are a few names from the Soviet past like Rahim Safarov and Farukh Nigmatzadeh who address the social problems on the canvases. Nevertheless, the younger generation of artists differentiates from older generation in trying to become more vocal and active, targeting their social problems. Here are some samples of younger artists. Vaisa Soev portrays the idleness of kids during the pandemic, and Manisha Abdullaeva sees people faces turning gradually into the toilet paper. Allegoric, of course. Here is a digital art sample from Nasiba Karimova and a photo collage from Zarina Khadjimuratova, who reflects on kids' dreams to play while staying locked down home during the pandemic. Besides the visual art, there are theater activists. Here are the photos of Nigohinaf group, which pay attention to the global problems of violence. Also work of Khurshid Mustafoyev, who protest against the stigma towards the imprisoned woman, and I, who stage a performance dedicated to victims of torture. Besides the art activist group, there are the local NGOs which contribute in developing and preserving the arts and ecosystems of the country. I would rather to draw your attention to the work of Little Earth NGO, which had been active in the country. I'm sure the links to the activities will be disseminated over your network soon. I believe that arts and art activism could contribute to eco-literacy and eliminate ignorance. This is the most important language for education and understanding of the problems of ecosystem. We need to get support to become more efficient. The eco-literacy is vital and must be introduced widely in educational institutions, also widespread among general public. And before to finish my presentation and pass the floor to my colleagues Drew and Omed, I would like to express my gratitude to the organizers of this beautiful event for bringing us together. My sincere gratitude to Ms. Dragana and Steve and their colleagues for inviting us to be a goodwill ambassadors of our country. I believe in humans' wisdom and common sense, which could survive us from environmental and humanitarian disaster. Thanks so much for your attention, and I look forward for your question. Thanks.
Thank you, Loli. That was wonderful. I appreciate that very much. I'm sure that we'll have questions about the presentation and especially about this role of arts activism in dealing with environmental issues. But we'll ask those questions at the end of the presentation, all three presentations. And now I'd like to introduce Drew McCarter. Drew works for a nonprofit based in the United States, but operating all over the world, called Pure Earth. And our third speaker, Umed, also is affiliated with that organization as well. And he will explain the work that they're doing globally, but then focus in on Tajikistan, and then we'll have Umed take us home with what's going on there in his country. So, Drew, take it away.
Thanks, Steve, and thanks, Loli. Let me just share my screen here. My computer's a little bit slow in this process, so just forgive me while I give you the full screen here. So as Steve said, my name's Drew, and I work for this international nonprofit organization called Pure Earth, which deals with the issues of toxic chemical pollution. So we're talking about things like heavy metals and toxic pesticides, radiation, and these kinds of issues. And our group has been active working directly with Umed and his organization for 8 or 10 years now. I'm so happy to join you all here because Tajikistan isn't a place that we talk about that much in the US, but it's such a cool country. I loved going there the multiple times that I've been. It's such a beautiful place. So I'm just happy to share it and be part of any conversation about it. So as Steve said, I'm going to talk about kind of global pollution challenges and then slowly zero in on those that face Tajikistan before passing it over to Umed. So I'd like to show you a little bit about what we have in the last 20 years kind of discovered about this particular environmental challenge. And first, a couple kind of basic facts. When I'm talking about pollution, I'm talking about the kind of pollution that's acutely toxic to humans. So there's ocean plastic and there's greenhouse gases and other types of pollution that are important and worth dealing with, but the types I'm talking about here are those that are kind of true poisons for people. And these types of pollutants are responsible for about 16% of all deaths worldwide. And despite the fact that we don't talk about them much, they actually cause an enormous human health toll. They kill more people than AIDS, malaria, and tuberculosis by far, really. And end up killing about 9 million people per year. And if you kind of stack that up against other issues that we talk about a lot, you can see how these different issues that we're potentially more familiar with rate against pollution. Drugs and alcohol and tobacco and malnutrition, they really kind of pale in comparison to the toll taken by pollution, which is why, we're out in the world trying to yell at everyone, hey, let's pay attention to this too, everyone, because it takes such a dramatic toll. And one of the huge problems is that toll is fundamentally inequitable. Pollution almost only kills people in low and middle income countries. 92% of the deaths occur in low and middle income countries. So it's fundamentally unequal in its distribution in the world. And our organization works only in low and middle income countries because of this fact. So let's take a look about what we're talking about here. I said it's about 16% of deaths in the world, but in some countries it's much more than that. So if you look on the southeastern tip of Africa there at Madagascar, it's really a quarter of all people that die in Madagascar die from pollution, diseases that are attributable to pollution exposure. So quite a dramatic problem in many countries in the world, not so much in the high income countries, but in others certainly. So how did our organization kind of learn about the scope and severity of this? We started about 20 years ago working on this problem, and we started just cleaning up toxic sites that we would hear about through other organizations or the news. And then very quickly we realized there's no global database of toxic hotspots. The World Bank doesn't have one. The United Nations doesn't have one. Nobody knew at the time, and this was about 2010, how many toxic sites there were in the world, or how many people were affected, or how severe or dangerous they were. There just was very limited information. So we started a program called the Toxic Sites Identification Program. And in the last 10 years, we've identified and assessed in field assessments about 5,000 places in the world that have these acute toxins contaminating communities. And right away, a couple of trends started to show up that we weren't expecting. You know, to be honest, what we were expecting is we would find kind of big international corporations causing a big mess through oil exploration or something like that. And that would have been maybe more morally satisfying. But what we found was that the vast majority of toxic sites in the world are caused by really small scale, kind of mom and pop scale enterprises that are doing an industrial process with just very crude equipment. And the other things that popped out were a couple of pollutants, particularly lead and mercury, chromium, and pesticides. These were and when I say pesticides, I mean ones that have been banned and are obsolete and have been dumped. And we're going to get more into that in Tajikistan. But these were the things that showed up most. So let's just take a brief look at, I'm actually going to skip this, about the sources of these. So one thing that people might be most familiar with is e-waste recycling. So if you recycle your phone or computer and the person that receives it is not very responsible with it, it may end up in Ghana, or it maybe used to end up in China. They don't take it anymore, but other Southeast Asian countries, many African countries, where it's simply burned in an open field like this, releasing a whole big basket of chemicals. This is Ghana that we're looking at right now at a really famous site called Agbabloshi. And this is a process that released airborne, soil, water contaminants, everything you can think of. Not actually one of the most prevalent sources we find, though. The most common chemical we find out in the world is lead. And you know, lead used to be a big problem in the US because we introduced lead into gasoline. These days, every country's banned lead in gasoline, save for one or two. But now, given that more people own cars, car battery recycling, informal car battery recycling, is the major driver of lead pollution in the world, as well as spices that are adulterated with lead and cookware that is either glazed with a lead-based glaze or is made of aluminum that is mixed with lead. So these are some of the issues that we're finding out in these low and middle income countries. Let's take a quick look at the battery recycling one. When I say that, you know, these batteries, if you're in Bangladesh and everyone is newly able to buy a motorbike or an e-rickshaw or a car, you're generating so many more batteries and they just don't have enough capacity and the infrastructure to recycle them. They're recycled in situations like this, where they're manually ripped apart, often by women of childbearing age or by kids, the two people most vulnerable to lead poisoning. The lead plates, a car battery is just a plastic box with lead plates and sulfuric acid inside. The lead plates are dumped into a barrel or a hole in the ground and melted back into lead bars. The problem is if it's done not in a kind of a high-tech, environmentally sound factory, you'll lose about 20% of the lead up into the air as dust, and that falls back down in the community and poisons all of the children. And the waste from all of this is just kind of dumped in the community, as it was here in a project site of ours in Bangladesh. So lead is by far the biggest problem we find out in the world. This is a community in Armenia where they actually had a mine right next to this church where people would get married and school groups would come to visit this beautiful historic church. And in this town, 50% of the kids had lead poisoning because of, again, lead fumes going up into the air. Another big problem we see in the world is chromium. Hexavalent chromium is another carcinogenic chemical from leather tanning. So you know, leather boots, leather bags, all the leather products in the world, that leather is all tanned. It's not all tanned with toxic chemicals, but a lot of it is. And it's a big problem, particularly in South Asia and parts of Africa. These are leather hides out drying. But the issue is that they use this chemical, chromium, to make the leather more pliable and more durable. and it's a carcinogen, and it gets into groundwater, and it's a big problem in South Asia, as I said. This is a glass of water that we pulled from a project site of ours out of a well next to a leather tannery. Hexavalent chromium is yellow, and this is like a 9-year-old kid who held the glass for us as we pulled well water out of, you know, the community well, and that's what it looked like. And it's yellow not because of the dirt is yellow, it's yellow because chromium is yellow. The third big problem that emerged from these 5,000 sites that we've looked at in the world was the use of mercury in small-scale gold mining. So small-scale gold mining actually accounts for a lot of the gold produced in the world. And there are tens of thousands of people, individuals and families, that mine this, just kind of panning for gold, or really small scale little operations, pulling rock out of the earth. And the fastest and easiest way to separate gold from ground up rocks and river sediment is to squirt a bunch of mercury into your bag of sediment. The mercury is attracted like a magnet to the gold particles. It finds the gold, it binds as one, creates an amalgam of gold and mercury. And if you mix all your sediment up with the mercury and the gold dust, you'll just end up with this ball that's half mercury and half gold. You can just remove that and then burn the mercury, and the gold remains. But mercury is one of the most dangerous toxins out there, and when you burn it, you're just vaporizing it so that you and your family, often this is done in the home, just breathe in mercury vapors. And you don't want to see photos of kids that have been born to mercury exposed women. It's really heartbreaking. Just some more photos of this kind of small scale gold mining process. These guys they've got a little mining pan there, finding the concentrate ore in the center there. And these guys aren't going to use mercury because they're working with us, but this guy is. That blowtorch there is burning away the mercury to leave behind the gold. And that's the product of, you know, a couple of days of work right there. This is a photo of pesticides, and I wanted to get here because this is what we're going to talk about in Tajikistan. We find obsolete and banned pesticide stockpiles throughout the former Soviet republics, and this is a big challenge in Tajikistan as well. And what we've noticed is that when the Soviet Union broke up, the republics that emerged often did not have a great deal of information about what was in their newly formed borders. So it's been a slow process of realizing just what a big challenge they've had for those governments. These stockpiles were kind of abandoned in derelict factories that sometimes are collapsing, and warehouses that have been abandoned. And the pesticides inside them, DDT and others, are terribly toxic and are now, 20, 30, 40 years abandoned. So whatever container they were put in, typically a sack, is now deteriorated and wind is blowing through. So quite a challenge, specifically in the region that we're looking at. So transitioning to Tajikistan, of course, one of the 15 former Soviet republics, a spectacularly beautiful country. 90% mountainous, and I'll show you some pictures of my first entry into Tajikistan because it blew my mind. A country reliant a lot on remittances, particularly from workers that go to Russia to work, has some mining and agriculture as its main economy, and quite a young population, really. But now what I really wanted to show you is, if anyone ever gets the chance to visit Tajikistan, as you fly in, you will spend hours looking at uninterrupted, spectacular mountains. It's 90% mountainous. And when you're looking down in the airplane flying over this, and it just never ends, you think to yourself, has anyone been down there ever? I wonder if anyone has been anywhere in this photo. It almost seems like it's uninhabited, and of course it isn't, but just such a beautiful flight in, and such a beautiful country. Just to wrap it up before I hand over to Umed, we have with Umed, and truly I should say Umed has identified 221 contaminated sites in Tajikistan. Most of these, all of the green dots here, have these kind of pesticide stockpiles, either buried in the ground or in derelict warehouses, and community members living right around them inhaling this stuff. So a real concern for us, and I commend Umed, who has done, a lion's share of the work in this country to identify and clean up a lot of these sites. So with that, over to Umed.
Thank you, Drew. And I will introduce Umed here. Umed, thank you for joining us. I have to say that the work that people like you do is totally inspiring, and such a critical part of what Earth Day and the modern environmental movement has led to. Love to get your perspective on this, and then we'll have questions for all three of our panelists afterwards. So, Umed, I'll turn it over to you for your presentation.
Thank you very much for organizing this meeting. It's very, in my opinion, it's very useful for everyone to know what's going on, and city is parallel, and Tajikistan is part of this country. So my name is Umed Ulugov, and I represent public organization PESHSAF since 2001. As 19 years I'm working in the sphere of NGO, and our main activity since 2001 was environmental protection in Tajikistan. I would like to present you one of our activities we are doing in environmental sphere. It's environmental monitoring and different kind of spheres. So our organization, as I told previously, was established in 2001. We are local NGO, but we have 23 public organizations in our partnership coalition. This coalition was established thanks to Pure Earth and European Union project. We did a big job in Tajikistan since 2017. And the main direction of our organization is identify the polluted areas and clean up these territories in order to give people the chance for better life and healthy life. So for this moment, we finalized 5 cleanup sites, and it identified 134 sites with obsolete pesticides contamination. The total sites we have in Pure Earth database 221. So this activity conducted with the Committee on Nature Protection, Republic of Tajikistan. So why these problems are very important for Tajikistan? Because I would like to say that in Soviet Union time, a lot of hectares, million hectares land of Tajikistan was recognized as territory for growing cotton. Soviet government gave us million dollars, if you say dollars, million rubles, in order to open new territories, conduct irrigation system. They supplies million tons of pesticides for these purposes. And unfortunately, people didn't use this because it was free of charge, and most of them became obsolete. They didn't use by the local people, and they burned all of these pesticides, or they put all pesticides in the land for as a storage near the warehouses. So day by day, this problem became more complete. Complicated. So people in Tajikistan bought territories which contaminated with pesticides, build the new houses, and now they are living there without any conditions, and they have to live with the obsolete pesticides, which is influence on their health. So of course we can talk that in Tajikistan we have another kind of problems, environmental problems, it's transport, deforestation, land degradation, something like this. But for my opinion, pollution is one of the problems we have to solve now, because we are talking about children, and children in most in a risky area. So why we are talking about the health problem with regarding the pollution? Because we are using Blacksmith Institute index from 0 to 10, and we are counting how many people are under the influence, concentration of pollutants, kind of toxic pollutants, and how these pollutants can be exposure to the people. That's why we are determining index uh, according to the database of Pure Earth. At this moment, we have more than 100 sites we have to clean up, and of course, we have to more serious to this problem. In 2010, our organization became a part of Blacksmith Institute, which is now Pure Earth. Drew told about this one. So our activities was slowly because we should educate, train it, and thanks to Pure as our employees or organization was trained, was educated in this area, and we are using a new inventory programs in order to identify toxic polluted sites in Tajikistan. As I mentioned, 134 toxic sites, which is contaminated with obsolete pesticides. At this moment, we identified more than 70 sites. It's heavy metal, mercury, lead contaminated areas, it's mountain areas, of course. So I would like to talk about some of the sites in Tajikistan and the history of these sites. In the picture, you can see here village number 1. This is a south district of Tajikistan named Jaikhun. It's very close to the natural reservation named Tigrovaya Balka. It's a big area, territory of biodiversity in Tajikistan. In the world, the first and only natural reservation where you can find 56,000 hectares of the unique forest, which is protected by the government of Tajikistan. And here you can find storage with a DDT 1,000 times more than it should be concentration in the land. And here lives 4 families, lived the 4 families. Unfortunately, they lived here with the children. Most of the children was sick when we identified different kind of illnesses. So we attract attention of the Committee on Environmental Protection and some international organization as a Green Cross and FSD Swiss company. So they built a new 4 houses and removed all the families. But unfortunately, this territory was not cleaned up, because in order to clean up this territory, we need about 500,000 USD. It's approximate our calculation, but our organization closed up of all of this territory, and for this moment, we have to think about how to clean up this area. In our opinion, more than 1,000 tons of pesticides are digged up in the area. I mean, buried in this area. So this is another district in the south, village named Yakatut. We found out here PDK of Alpha Lindan 830. This area was sold out to the entrepreneur, 1 hectare land, he sold this territory to the 16 families distributed by six um, distributed to the 16 families. They built a new apartments, new houses for them, but they cannot live there because the smells is bad. Pesticides removed from soil the food of the people. So near of this area, you can find a special pool. It's like a lake, a small lake for fish. It's removed to the fish. And we conducted this action in 2017 using the money of OSCE and money we attracted from local people and selling out waste paper. So collecting and selling out waste paper. We spend out about not more than 20,000 USD in order to clean up all this territory, but we have to remove baseline of this storage in the future, because we suppose that under this baseline you can find more than 200 or 300 tons of pesticides, which was put here in the Soviet Union. This is another area in a village named Ziraki, district Kulyab. It is center of south of Tajikistan. This is a storage which was functioning during Soviet Union time, but still they kept all pesticides. Also, we have found here arsenic, 83,000 times more than it should be in concentration. About 20,000 containers, China containers. Unfortunately, Tajikistan is not safe because from China comes a lot of pesticides for this moment, and it's not under the control. We conducted action in October 2018, and we removed about 12,000 tons of obsolete pesticides and empty containers. This storage was cleaned up fully, and now entrepreneur is using this storage for keeping non-food materials, and this storage is functioning still. This is another storage in a village named Darkat, South District Farhar. We found out here also DDT and Tiodan. You can see here a lot of pesticides which is not using by people, but it is about 30 tons. The same time in October 2018 we conducted an action campaign, information campaign. Also we told about people about the influence of pesticides on the health of people, and we cleaned up these old territories. Three more. This is village Sherabat, Jami district. You can see here we are conducting research, deep research, because we identifying also heavy metals here. So we found out here DDT concentration 22,000. Concentration of DDT. So, but it's very close to the river, and in Soviet Union time, one of the places of the burial was removed by the water, and all DDT went to the Transbondre River. That's why we cleaned up this territory in January 2020. We removed about 260 cubic meters of polluted land here, and about 7 tons of obsolete pesticides, which was packaged in the different kind of packages. This is village Sangoba, Kabadion district, also south. You can see here a lot of pesticides. It is only covered by the land, but inside of this in this place you can find DDT with concentration 18,000. This open space, access for people and children, open, no problems to be there. And also we conducted in January 2020 this action on cleanup, and we removed about 1,200 12,000 tons of obsolete pesticides and packages. All obsolete pesticides removed from these places was transported to Vakhsh polygon. We had Tash polygon. This is Nosiri Khusrav district, the big area with pesticide storage, about 60 tons of obsolete pesticides and 200 cubic meters of polluted areas. This place was removed. Now the people live here and without problem they are doing this job. Thank you very much. It is very shortly about our activities in Tajikistan.
Umed, thank you so much. Now I'd like to, Umed, if you could stop sharing your screen. I'd like to bring all of our panelists back on, Drew and Loli and Umed, and we'll do our Q&A. Again, I just am so appreciative of all the work that you are doing under, I know, what can be sometimes some difficult circumstances. The first question that we have, Loli, is for you. And this is a question about the Soviet period. And how would you categorize the legacy of the Soviet culture on Tajikistan in terms of the arts, in terms of culture?
Thanks very much for the question. Unfortunately, I don't want to go to this colonial and post-colonial discourse, which is very popular now. I just want to talk from my own perspective, because being kind of pro-Western, because I really like European culture, visual arts traditions and the dance and etc. I'm of course proponent for the traditional perspective also, because I'm just a normal human being, and I see that Soviets influence Tajikistan not bad, I would say like this. Why? Because before okay, when we talk about Tajikistan, what is Tajikistan? Tajikistan shaped up in its statehood during the Soviet, because this is the eastern part of Bukhara Empire. Was everything was was a huge territory, was Turkestan and the Bukhara Empire and etc. I am not historian. I'm just telling you, just in general, that the Tajik side, current Tajikistan, is a part of historically was the eastern part of eastern Bukhara, where the Bachabozi, for example, sexual exploitation of men was very vivid, for example. And what I really like about Soviets brought woman liberation. They brought the woman become part of public space. I really appreciate it. And being part of public space, they become public of many cultural events like dances and etc. They become equal to men, and that's why this is a kind of many horrible things like bachabozi, sexual exploitation was eradicated. And then there was a tradition in Tajik culture not to depict a human body and faces and etc. This was kind of stopped. And then I really appreciate, because also ballet, for example, was introduced different type of Western or European kind of culture. I really appreciate. Of course, there are some disadvantages. Along with advantages, there are some disadvantages. For example, there was Tajik was kind of deprived from its roots by not having the access to the literature or some books in Farsi. This script, Farsi script, was banned, and they introduced the Cyrillic, and everything what we had then, it was everything in Cyrillic, and that's why, what else? I think also, because Soviets had, I think, not kind practice towards the religious traditions, and that's why many musical instruments, for example, was kind of banned to play. Can you imagine these genres, falak, something like, like the kind of mado? There was all time was kind of religious, belonged to religious cultural transition, something like that, and they were banned, and that's why I think this is kind of disadvantages from the Soviets.
Great.
But in general, I really like. I always say myself that my identity, I am Sovietic, because even being raised up in an Uzbek family, because our roots, my roots from Bukhara. My granddad and was born in Bukhara, but I cannot identify myself Uzbek or Tajik. I always identify myself as a Soviet because I speak Russian, and just proponent for this kind of positive side of Soviet legacy. I would say like that.
Interesting. Thank you. So we have two questions along the same lines, and I'll just combine them. And the question is for Umed. How do you clean up the pesticide contaminated soil? Do you remove the soil, or can somehow it could be encapsulated or cleaned in place? And then, where does it go?
Thank you very much for the questions. We have our methodology created by a different kind of international organization. First of all, it's a FAO methodology and adopted methodology by Pure Earth, where contaminated soil, which is under the 10% of concentration, could be buried again in this area, but higher than 10%. Should be removed from this area. In our situation, in all districts, contamination was more than 30%. That's why all contaminated soils was removed, packaged in the big bags, storage in special polygon. We have an area created in 1970 by Soviet Union, Vaksh polygon, the name of this polygon Vaksh. So we created there two big storages with the concentration with the storage about 2,000 tons. So we are putting all our big bags there. So for temporary time, because we are looking for JEF project here in Tajikistan, which is comes with solution of neutralize of all pesticides. So maybe in 2 years, we will have first option, American technology on non-thermal burning of the pesticides, or we will use local cement plants, which is mostly Chinese one, in order to burial of pesticides in soil. So we are looking for both technologies, which one is good. But according to the Stockholm Convention, of course, it should be non-thermal. So that's why most of the pesticides removed and contaminated soil, of course, removed to the special polygon, which has no access to people and animals.
Interesting. So, Drew, did you want to say something? You're on mute. There you go.
Yes, just to add that in this context, the word polygon refers to a hazardous waste landfill.
Okay. And Drew, I'll ask the next question. This is a question that came in, and I'll ask you to kind of give the big picture from the global perspective, and then Drew can, Umed can maybe address it locally in Tajikistan. But I imagine that there are challenges in a lot of these countries in working with the government, both local governments and national governments. How do you navigate that in general as a nonprofit organization?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. We had to decide early on, basically, if we were going to be a name and shame organization or an organization that was strictly solutions based. And I have no judgments about either. There is a role for both in the world. And we chose to be a strictly solutions based organization. We work with others that have taken the other tact and use them to raise the profile of issues and knock people on the heads. But for us, we don't run into a lot of resistance from governments because we're never there to highlight their problems, not to highlight their problems, but we're never there to blame them for their challenges or to blame anyone per se. We show up with technical solutions and money. So that makes it a bit easier to navigate.
And I'll ask the same question of Umed and Loli. So, one can imagine how it might be hard sometimes to be an environmental activist. I mean, even in this country, the United States, to be an activist of any kind, whether environmental or arts activist or whatever, you run into opposition from various forces, whether they be business forces or government forces. How do you navigate that situation? What is the current situation in Tajikistan? And are you able to navigate that successfully? And I'll ask Umed first.
Activity in Tajikistan, we have in our country, we cannot to do without permission of local government, because our country is most bureaucratic, and of course we have to coordinate all our activities with the local authorities, decision maker in environmental sphere, at the Committee on Nature Protection, which is very flexible. I mean, comparing with the other ministries and the committees, Committee on Nature Protection are very flexible. And one of the points we are trying to show to the people, to the decision makers, that obsolete pesticides is a problem of legacy. I mean, it's a legacy problem. It's a problem of Soviet Union. It's not a problem of local government. That's why they can start to deal with this problem without any afraid. I mean, don't afraid of this problem, and they have to deal with this. So that's why we are in a close contact with the local authorities. But if we will start to say, this is your problem because the land was distributed after the Soviet Union time. Because in Soviet Union time, more the warehouses were under the control. They were closed. No people, no animals, no children, But only now, in this time, this period, when we became independent, most of the land, kolkhoz, collective farmers, Soviet Union farmers, they collapsed, and all of the land became a land of the local communities. They sold out this land. And that's why now they are trying to build out new houses on the contaminated areas. We cannot talk about this problem. We started to talk about this problem in Jami, and it became a big problem for local authorities because they start a criminal case on the behavior of local decision makers, and they stopped because they cannot make criminal cases on themselves.
Yeah,
this is a problem.
Loli, I want to just talk a little bit, have you talk a little bit, and we're running out of time here. We're almost we're at the top of the hour, but we have a couple of minutes to wrap this up. But Loli, if you could just talk about the role of the arts and arts activism, and what are some of the challenges there?
I'm going to be very brief. Thanks very much for the question. Actually, I just want to emphasize that Tajik government has own agenda for the culture, arts and culture. Actually, I don't want to say that it's nothing done for this, but and also the true that Tajik government doesn't consider any critiques, any protesting arts on its agenda. And that's why we are kind of underground. Yeah, and just I want to tell you that it's not possible for the visual artists, for example, to make street arts. It's forbidden to make murals or something like that. You have to get the permission, but it's impossible. It's very hard to get that permission to make the murals and etc. And for example, when it comes to rap music, rock music is the most kind of protest lyrics and etc. It's also from 2017. Government doesn't like it to be to broadcast it publicly, because it's they don't like it. And also when it comes to cartoons, it also might be the tools for the convening this is a critiques toward the government, for example, also kind of, but I think there is a room for negotiation, for discussing, for making the bridges, I think it's just the art activists themselves, they need to build up, to have the solidarity, to support each other, and to be a force, just if we want to live in a better society, we need to help government to look at their own problems, because the government is responsible for many things, to tackle the problems. That's why the artists just need to be like supporters to negotiate, to discuss it, and to do it all together. I believe in the power of art, really, Yeah, that's why I'm into it. Thanks.
Well, that's why we invited you to be part of this. We believe in the power of art and the power of the importance of communicating around these very, very critical matters. Just in 15 seconds, I'm going to ask each of you to tell me what gives you hope for the future. I know it's been a tough year all the way around. I know you've had COVID there, like we've had COVID. Some of you have even had personal experience with that. It's been a tough year all the way around. But what is it that gives you hope for the future? And I'll start with Drew.
Loli and Umed. From my perspective and the type of work that we do, having national champions that take, knowledge that we transfer, a little seed, anything that we give them, and turn it into something huge and productive and beautiful. That's what we need for our work. That's what the world needs. That's what Tajikistan needs. So, they're the hope I want to see in the world and the change I want to see in the world.
Umed, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, thank you very much. We are not looking on situation with pandemic, but we are still continuing to work in Tajikistan, and our aim, Tajikistan toxic free. This is name of coalition and the same aim for us. We have to clean up all territories. It's not easy, but it's not difficult. We need only 5 million in my calculation. 5 million USD, to clean up and make Tajikistan clean without obsolete things.
Great. And Loli?
Yeah, it's from my side. I'm going to continue contributing, spreading information about my country, and also I'm going to be active in making the arts and just spreading the word about my country and helping the government to understand its own problems through the arts, through the articles and etc. And also I will use all my capacity as an art manager for receiving the grants and the support and to help the local artists who doesn't have those capacity as I have, for example. I'm gonna use my experience fully. This is my agenda for incoming years, and also to build up and strengthen the network. I really appreciate to be part of your program. Steve. Thanks so much. And Steve, to Dr. Lydia Varbanova, who connected us, you know, thanks to her, and thanks to everyone in your team. Thanks for inviting us with me. I'm happy.
Well, it's all about making connections. And I have to say, I'm sort of astounded that we're able to do this. I mean, here we are, it's 9 o'clock in the morning tomorrow in Tajikistan. And here we are having this very easy and pleasant conversation all the way around the world. And so I think there's some things about technology that are pretty remarkable. And this is one of the great things about what we do here at Visions of the Wild is making.
Yes, I wish our internet was cheaper, because it's too much expensive, and especially for independent people who freelance, it's a huge money to me.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, thank you all so much. Really appreciate it. And we'll see you again for Visions of the Wild in January when we talk about land art and the land art movement. And thanks again to everybody who's joined us on the program this evening.
Thanks very much.
Good night and good morning.